Welcome back to the Volvo Ocean Race. It is lucky day 13 on leg 6 and the boats are going nowhere. They're all stuck in the doldrums. However, to make up for that, we've got plenty of action going on here in race control. I'm going to be joined later by Jen Etney, OBR extraordinaire. We are going to be flying one of these inside race control. Not sure if that's a good idea to be doing underneath the roof, but we'll do it anyway. And then continuing with the theme of the OBR special today, we'll be talking with Jan Ryu on Team Brunel, also Carlo Hoosman to give us the sailor's perspective. And then finally, as an extra special treat, we're going to be playing a video that we recorded yesterday with Ken Reid. So he's the president of North Sails, but most notably, as it relates to us, two-time skipper of the Volvo Ocean Race. So we've got his expert eye on all of the action going on out on the water. First, let's check out what the story is. This is kind of what the situation looked like sort of 3 days ago. And remember, there was a crucial decision. Do you go south early, or do you head out on that easterly side there? So winding the clock back, we can sort of see what the consequences were of that choice. And frankly, well, we've seen the images on the quick fix and on the raw wall. You can see that they're now sailing in sort of 7 knots, 8 knots of wind if they're lucky. And when I spoke with the boats earlier, well, they were flapping around and going nowhere. You can see their tortured progress on the route there. And earlier when I spoke with Jan Ryu, indeed on Team Brunel, he only had 2.2 knots of wind, and they were looking a little bit glum.
Well, I think they are surprisingly quiet, and they take, well, whatever happens as it happened. Actually, they didn't. Today we had like a couple of hours ago, we had some kind of close racing with turn the tire on plastic, and there was actually very very close, and we'd have different conditions than themselves. Sometimes we were quicker, sometimes faster, sometimes they were faster, and well, you just take it as it comes, and there's not much you can do about it. So, but generally, I think this period is good because I think the boat is, well, generally fast on this leg, a lot faster than on the previous leg.
Jan, we're hearing a lot of banging behind you, and I presume that that's the mainsail flapping, given that you have maybe 2 knots of wind. Can you describe the situation where you are now?
Yeah, well, I'm sitting on deck, on the roof, and there's 2.7 knots of wind. We still have the masthead 0 deployed, but it's not really filled, or it's just filled. And flat water, no noise, almost. Everybody's probably listening to what I'm saying on deck, I mean, and yeah, that's it.
Can you just show us the instruments with your camera over your shoulder?
Sure.
To give us a sneak preview live from the Volvo Ocean Race.
Yeah. So, can you see them?
Yeah.
Can get a little bit closer. So you have on the top, you have the boat speed, and on the bottom, 2.7. You have the 2.3. This is the true wind speed. Oops. Yeah, like this.
Brutal. Would you be willing to pass this over to Carlo, please?
Sure. Carlo? So I'm moving forward to the bow. I hope I still have some Wi-Fi there. Normally, yes. The hatch here. Oops, where are you? Here?
This is not normally things that ocean racing sailors have to deal with. This is fantastic.
All right, here you go. Just speak a little bit loud because there's no microphone.
Copy that. Hello?
Hi, Carlo. You drew the short straw. You got to talk to me today.
Yeah, no worries. All good.
As a racing sailor, can you tell me what it's like to be drifting around in 2 knots right now?
Yeah, it's pretty difficult. You know, you try to put yourself in a position where you can stay in some breeze, but always changes on you, and you get stuck in no breeze at all, or you get like a nice puff, but then there's just glass behind it. So it's a good challenge for sure. And in our little battle with Team Plastic, we got a bit unlucky, and they made a nice gain on us. But now we can still see them. They're just a couple of miles to weather of us. Yeah, I think just gotta try and sail your own race here and move from pressure to pressure, and not really worry too much about what the other guys are doing.
We've only got 8 sailors on board for this league. Can you talk us through that strategy and what it's like to be sailing short-handed on a Volvo 65?
Yeah, it's. I think you're always sailing short-handed on these boats, but we've had Annie down in the Southern Ocean, and then we've had Sam Newton down a couple of days in the last leg, and we sort of figured that we managed those days, and we knew this was going to be another light leg, and we just figured that it might be good to try and sail with one person less if we could manage. And we felt pretty confident that we could do that. So yeah, it's putting a bit more pressure on everyone, but it's turning out to be all right so far. We're missing Abby this leg, and she does a lot of work on the boat, and she's a great sailor. I miss her a lot, and I think we could have definitely used her in the pit as well, because we've had a couple of incidents there, and so yeah, definitely someone as good as she is, you miss her a lot, so you take a penalty, but at the same time, we're drifting now with probably doing 1.1 knot boat speed, so yeah, you just want to try and shed the weight as well.
We'll be back for more with Jan Ryu on our OBR themed day, but first off, Will, you can take off that helmet. I promise you we're not going to put you in danger when we fly the drone a little bit later on in the show. But first, let's check in with, as I said at the top, 2-time skipper of the Volvo Ocean Race, Ken Reed, on just how closely he's watching this race from on shore.
We're fully into it. Listen, for 2 reasons. Obviously, because it's really the most fun sailing years I ever did in my life were those two Volvo campaigns. But secondly, we're following it from a sales standpoint. This is from a Southern Spars and North sales standpoint. This is still a massive project for us. It's as important as anything we do for a variety of reasons. One, great customers. It's the elite of the elite, but it also puts our products to the test like you can't ever fathom. And the trickle down from that is what hopefully benefits everybody else in the world who gets a North Sails from then on. So it's very important for us.
Is the Southern Ocean or the doldrums more painful for sails?
For sure, the doldrums. Believe it or not, it's that slatting, that slapping, that poking through spreader tips. Sails love to be loaded. When sails are designed, they're designed for a certain amount of stress in certain areas, very specific amount of stress in certain areas, and there's no doubt that slatting of mainsails even is way worse than actually using a mainsail. I always joke with people that the worst thing you can do for a sail is to take it down, fold it up, and stick it in a bag. It loves to be up, it loves to be flying. That's what it's designed to do. And even Southern Ocean, if you're out there in 40, 50 knots of breeze, you have sails up that are designed to be in 40, 50 knots of breeze, and all the better, let her rip.
Yeah. Now, let her rip. I might want to not use that in future times.
Fair point. Good point.
So, I mean, I've worked on the floor, and indeed, a few years ago, I myself was sort of stitching North Sails logos and soft clues into sails that went on to go and do the Volvo Ocean Race. So I've got some sort of first-hand experience, both as a user and as a fabricator. But for those at home, what's this stuff made out of? Can you talk a little bit about how they're made?
Yeah, sure. Well, this is a robotics factory. This is not, you have your unique feel of sitting. You think of a sailmaker as sitting behind a sewing machine and calmly sewing away. And this is about glue. This is closer to building a boat than it is building a sail. This is about a pre-preg laminate that has no chance of delaminating. There's no films. There's no nothing. The 3DI process is, I think it's about 10 years old now on a commercial basis. we have sales that are still out there 6, 7, 8, 9 years into their piece that are still sailing around no problem. It's really, we claim it's the first time in history that the lightest sail is now the most durable sail, and it's because of this process. And it's all robotics. The factory in Minden, Nevada, where all these sails are built, it's a robotics factory. Far more, the only thing that's sewn are the straps in the corners, and that's literally it.
Yeah.
So things have changed. Things have changed a long way. And you know what? It was the 2011 Volvo that I did that everybody kind of made that courageous leap into 3DI. And you know what? Haven't looked back since. It's the right cloth for the right application.
Sails used to be made out of, woven cloth, and then you went to filaments with plastic on either side. We're trying to turn the tide on plastic here, so we're stepping away from that. What are the new generations of 3DI made out of?
So 3DI is essentially a patented process that first 3DI sails were actually made by the Alinghi campaign, I think for the 2007 America's Cup, and it was a process that we actually purchased from Alinghi and then commercialized. It's called spread filament tapes that we create. We take a tiny little thread of aramid or carbon or spectra and put it through this fancy little machine, spread it out into a piece of tape with a little bit of glue in it, and use literally tens of thousands of these tapes all over. That's what creates the sail, are these little tapes. But the process is called spread filament. So these particular sails actually are not carbon, even though the boats themselves are carbon. These sails aren't carbon, and there's a couple of reasons why. First of all, the aramid spectra blend is a little more durable. It's a little heavier, but it's a little more durable, and we're trying to minimize the overall amount of sails. But secondly, for these antennas to see satellites, especially in certain parts of the world, it's looking right through a mainsail or right through a code 0. And because communication in these races become, A, from a safety reason, so critical, and B, from a media perspective, so critical, that you can't be in a part of the world where the satellites can't see through the sails. And it can see through aramid spectra blend. It can't see through carbon fiber. So that's one of the other main reasons why this 3DI process for the Volvo Ocean Race sails is actually an aramid spectra blend.
That's Ken Reed's sales pitch over for now, but he'll be joining us again on that call tomorrow. He had so many interesting insights that we didn't want to leave it to just that. So he'll be talking with us tomorrow about gender equality in sport, how to get into the Volvo Ocean Race if you're a youngster with sort of wide eyes looking at all of the footage coming in off the boats, and also sort of the sport in general. However, today is all about the OBRs. So earlier when I spoke with Jan Ryu on our call, I asked him what a typical day in the life of an OBR is really like.
Oh, it really depends on the conditions. Obviously, during the first week, it was a lot more complicated than it is now. Everything was a little bit complicated on the first week. It's complicated to go and brush your teeth. So obviously, to take some pictures on a wet deck of a Volvo 65 is really challenging, and everything takes time. So you'd better make sure when you go on deck that everything is cleared, that you have full batteries, that you have your lens clean, that your SD card is empty, and well, that you are prepared as well to go on deck. This week is a lot different. I mean, we don't have to wear anything.
Been really enjoying the images that you sent back earlier about the sort of the Garmin Verb on a stick with a swivel and the helmet. Is that something that you made yourself,
yeah,
or is that a custom item that you can go and buy in Amazon?
No, I made it myself during the last race. I made the system, but I think you can buy something similar in the market. Yeah. It's a little bit artisanal. It's not very. It looks good, but it's not something you would do every day because it's a bit challenging to set in place. And besides that, if you do that, if you decide to go for it, then you better hope that it's going to work, because if it doesn't, then if there's only one peel or one sail change during the day, you want to report the sail change. If it doesn't work, then you don't have anything else. You just focus on this thing. So it's interesting, a little bit challenging. It takes some time to set up something like that.
Cool. Now I'm going to put you on the spot here, Jan, because I know that the crew is sitting just behind you and can listen. But what is your relationship with the crew? Do you feel part of each team that you join, or do you need to maintain a sort of arm's distance relationship in order to be impartial?
Well, you can't be completely a part of the team because you're not in the watch system. You have a different. You don't have the same obligations, so you always feel a little bit apart from the team. And it was the case even last in the previous editions where we were actually employed by the team. But I think it's important to get as close as possible to the crew members to be able to report the stories. And actually, what I've experienced is that it takes a little bit of time. When I first arrived on Brunel on last leg, I didn't know anyone, well, hardly know anyone, and it took me some time before I get before I get to know those people on this boat and to report stories.
Well, from one OBR to another, and first of all, pretty cool camera, eh? We've been getting lots of questions about the equipment that's been supplied to the OBRs. It's not your equipment, right?
No, supplied by Volvo.
Cool. So talk us through this one, and we've got a pile of stuff to talk through and loads of your questions that have been coming in. So,
okay.
So Jen, talk us through it. What's in your bag of tricks here?
Well, we each have a Canon Mark V.
Yep.
I can't remember what it is. We have a Sony A7S, and
Yep.
we've got a few POV cameras, including, they're all Garmin.
So you've got a Garmin Verb, right? So you've got
Verb
360 and the normal one.
Yes.
Right?
And
a big Peli case, which normally weighs around 25 kilos. So in that you've got a Canon, you've got, what else? You've got another Canon, Sony body, right?
yeah, Canon, Sony, lenses, all the accessories that we need to keep our kit clean and dry, and mounts and batteries, everything we need, charging, everything
Cool.
we need on board.
And then the drones, as we talked about yesterday. Now, keep watching because we're going to do something funky with that shortly. So big black case. This one lives in another case. You've got one laptop, two laptops on board.
Yeah, we have one main laptop and a spare.
Yep. All right, well, plenty of gear and indeed plenty of questions. So you're here in Race Control in Alicante today, but if you turn around, you can see that OBR is the name of the game today. On-board reporter. So what does an OBR do when you're not on the boat?
This.
All right, cool.
Yeah, we're a multimedia reporter, and
Yep.
so we help out at HQ or on the ground wherever the media team needs us.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Now, how many OBRs are there in the sort of pool? Because you sort of rotate between the boats. And Franz Lichtnauer asked, are there any backup OBRs in case you smash your head against a wall again?
Yeah, that's why we have reserves, which is why I'm on the ground right now. So we have a few just in case that happens.
All right, very good. And then Derek Lane has been talking about, has been asking about your lens there. So this one here is a 16-35. It's pretty wide angle. Can you talk us through sort of different shots that you've done and what's your favorite lens?
My favorite lens is wide, and I mean I like wide and then one middle range, usually fixed if I can have it, and 70-200, so you can get the other boats if they're close to you, or wildlife, or just a different perspective on the boat. But my wide is my go-to.
All right, well, there we go. But even so, it's a big boat and it's hard to fit all of it in frame. So
Yes.
for that, you need a little bit of extra help. Now, Jen was showing me all the details of the Phantom Pro 4, the model that they're using on board. And earlier, we flew it inside. Cool. All right, so if you can just fly around Race Control a little bit, give it some altitude, and sort of talk me through the challenges of flying in a black box.
Yeah, right now you're just trying not to hit everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of this expensive equipment in here, so don't back this up.
Yeah.
But how does this compare to flying offshore?
It's just a little different because it is black box, so you're worried about hitting things. Offshore, though, you have wind, water, boat speed. You know, right now we're standing still, but when you're offshore, you're always moving. So the drone always has to be moving.
Can you go over and have another look at the camera here? Now these things are super high tech. They've got GPSs and barometers and actually 6 different cameras and ultrasonic sensors. So basically, it's designed to be as foolproof for the average consumer as possible. But here in this black box, because it's really confined and also offshore with the boats, you have to turn off all of those autopilot functions, right?
Yeah, so everything that's designed to make it easy to fly on land, you have to turn off when you're offshore. So like if you have obstacle avoidance on, you won't be able to catch it.
Yep.
It just won't come back to the boat. And return to home is the big one. So if you
how does that work?
If you have that on, then and something goes wrong with it, it'll return back to the place it was when you took off. But you won't be there.
And then in the meantime, the boat's moved 15 miles down the road.
Yep.
So
yeah.
Yep. And so do you guys, with all of your OBR colleagues, do you go and do sort of Top Gun maneuvers? Do you have competitions as to who can fly the best?
You know, one of the best pieces of advice I had from Sam was fly like you're running, like you're stealing something. Like fly like you're stealing something. Fly like you're running away from something.
And so that's a good follow-up question. These don't belong to you, they belong to the Volvo Ocean Race, right?
Exactly.
All right, well there you go. So you can actually fly it like you stole it.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the hardest things I think is actually getting it back. Obviously, we can't reenact that on a moving boat, but tell me how you bring it down.
You just got to bring it down level enough so that someone can catch it, either you or a sailor on the boat.
All right, well let's give that a go.
All right, we'll give it a try.
So go up again. Yep. All right, fantastic. I will. All right. So normally on the boat they use thick leather gloves because the risk is a lot higher that you can stick your hand up into the blades. But here it's a controlled environment and it's coming down nice and safe. It's doing a great job. And I can just catch it like that. Fantastic. Successful flight. Look forward to seeing that one go offshore again. All right. Well, Will thankfully was out of there, but you know he didn't take any precautions. He was still wearing his helmet for most of the day. But also, so it's not really a fair test to be flying around in a black box. That was pretty tricky. Talk to us about the real challenges of flying them offshore.
Well, you're just with the elements, so you have to watch out for the water, the wind, the waves. You know, check the weather before you go. So and be able to bring it back on board. That's the main thing.
Yeah, for sure. I flew these solo during the Vendée Globe, and so I was having to sail the boat and also fly the drone and then sort of launch and retrieve it by myself as well. So you guys have got it easy by comparison, but it's still really, really tricky. And so what are the great shots that have been made possible with the drones? It's really a game changer offshore now. You can get the whole, they're just spectacular. You get the whole boat in shot, and it really helps with the storytelling, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think in Sam Greenfield's shot of the container ship and showing the shipping and the other elements that you don't usually get to see, you know, in that way, or just being able to see another boat that you're racing against and how close they actually are from the sky is pretty cool. Yeah,
it's pretty cool. Seeing two boats sailing together is really powerful for us because otherwise we just don't get that sense of sort of drama. Sam Greenfield, he's currently at sea at the moment, and he's kind of a bit of a whiz kid when it comes to drones, isn't it? He also flew them at night even. But speaking of night shots, we've been getting lots of questions regarding that, most notably from Eleonora de Sabata, who wrote in saying that the stars are incredible, but tell us what camera you used, what specs, and how she can recreate those images herself.
I think the main one that we're all using for nighttime stuff is the Sony A7S. It's great in low light capabilities for both photo and video. So, yeah.
Okay, and so what are the other factors, aside from just going out and buying a fancy camera, what should you take into account?
Usually those shots are easier made when it's less bumpy and less wind because it's a pretty slow shutter speed. So I think personally I find ways to use various parts of the boat as a tripod to try to steady the camera a little bit when I can.
Cool.
So.
And then also you need to really crank up the sensitivity of the sensor as well.
Yeah. ISO capabilities is key in that. So.
Cool. Well, Jorg Weber wrote in talking about the night skies, saying that they are so beautiful. And so, again, was asking about the tricks that he could use. But what about using sort of foreground images, foreground elements at night as well? You know, how do you balance, no light in the sky or just starlight with putting a torch on something?
Yeah, I mean, you can use the torches of the sailors, any kind of lights that you have. I know at one point Sophie and I were messing around in the bow using a red light, so you don't blind the sailors, but trying to get cool effects when there's no wind.
Like
at night.
now?
Yeah,
Yep.
Like now. It's the time to do that kind of shot.
All right, well, there you go. Exclusive from Jen. They play around and take photos of each other when there's no wind. So another question from Kent Nason from Nova Scotia, asking, what is the watch schedule for an OBR, and is there anything that you're not allowed to photograph?
We're kind of on our own watch schedule. I create my own just because it helps me keep a rhythm on the boat. And
Weather depends, of course.
Yeah. So, but as far as being able to help on the boat, we're not able to help in any way move the boat forward or anything that helps the sailors sail the boat. But we can help with day-to-day chores, so bailing, cooking, anything that the sailors would do to help each other out in that regards, we can help.
Does that make you the most popular person on board because you're always making food for
It can.
everybody?
It's good to know everybody's coffee and tea orders.
Yeah. And hot chocolate, I'm sure.
And hot chocolate.
So we've got a question here from Lamping Ying Oscar asking about what your relationship is with the teams, in the sense that how do you strike the balance between sort of getting in people's faces and telling the story and sending it back to us versus sort of burning the bridges with the people that you're spending 3 weeks with?
Well, did you see my face after leg 3? No, I'm just kidding. It's just definitely finding out a balance with your team and when to push and when not to push. I mean, our job is to, push when it is uncomfortable, but you kind of can get a sense with each sailor when you can and when you can't, and basically just earn that trust and relationship with them, because you're there to do a job and they are too. But it's about building that relationship when you can.
Now, you spoke earlier about the things that you are and aren't allowed to do, but we've got a great question here from Daniel Back, who says, can you help in emergency situations? Can you fly one of those drones, for example, to go and find somebody if they fell overboard?
Yeah, we can help in emergency situations. That's just, it just changes the game in that sense. So, yeah.
And then if the boat's leaking, then you need to strike the balance between pumping the pumps and getting the shot as well.
Always have a POV camera ready.
There you go. All right, another top tip.
Yeah.
Now, another question here asking whether you got seasick. I think they picked up on the fact that you started out life as a landlubber. And so when you started shooting and most notably editing videos in the back of the boat with no wind, no windows, no horizon, did you get seasick?
Definitely, yeah. I've had my share of rough days at sea.
And so do you keep those airplane seasick bags sort of in your OBR?
I'm pretty
as well?
I'm pretty proactive about it because you can never tell when it's gonna come out.
So Captain Joy, sorry if I'm ruining your name there, he picked up on the fact that I said that this was sort of 25 kilos of stuff. Do you have a weight limit on board? And is there sort of a question with you and the skipper as to bringing more gear on to get the shot, or them sort of fighting to get weight off the boat?
No, we have a weight limit. We all have a certain limit we have to keep in between all 9 of us, all OBRs. So which was weighed at the beginning of the race. So try to keep to that.
Like, in contrast to an airplane, can you bring more gear because you're lighter and smaller than the other guys?
Oh, I wish, but no. That's a good question.
Cool. Now, one from Ashwin Braumeister. One of the things that we as fans don't really get to see is once the boats cross the finish line, you do the interview, and then what? Do they disappear into a dark cave? Do they go into a burger joint for the next 3 days? What do the crews do, and what do you do after you step on shore?
I think most people's first incentive is to get a good meal after having freeze-dried for however many days you've been at sea. So good meal, and a beverage, and a good night's sleep, I think, and a shower, I think, are the key things. So. And
then do you accompany them in their journey? Are you still on the job, or do you finally sort of get to down tools and get some rest yourself?
No, we're down, yeah.
Awesome. Thank goodness. Now, again, was it a difficult transition for you to get used to sailing on board a boat that's constantly bouncing and tilting all over the place?
I'm trying to remember when I
When
learned.
you started, yeah,
It was
exactly.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
It seems like second nature now, but yeah, it takes some getting used to, for sure. Just trying to balance yourself and your gear and trying to keep as many hands as you need on the boat.
And then can you talk a little bit about the profile of you and your colleagues? You know, that you started out not as a sailor, and we talked a little bit about your personal journey yesterday. But what's the sailing experience of a typical OBR? You know, can you talk about the route that different people took to this job?
I mean, I know my personal route. I didn't grow up sailing, but I've been sailing for the last 7 years, and I came into it from a journalism standpoint, from doing a story. But I'm not, I mean, I think all the guys in my group come from various sailing backgrounds, so, except for one.
Yeah, and most notably, I remember hearing a quote from one of the people that was trying out a few months ago before the start of the race. He had been implanted in Afghanistan working for the BBC as an embedded reporter, and he said the job of an OBR was harder than going to war. So this might be the worst job in the world, right? So anyway, clearly you're a tough nut to crack, and Victoria, despite your best efforts, Victoria Shabaker said, "Get Jen back on a boat, missing her awesome photos and footage. She's a tough cookie and stronger than half the men." So clearly you've got some fans out there, and I hope you get back out on a boat soon.
Thank you, Conrad. Me too.
Cool. Well, thanks very much for your insights. That's all for us today, and we'll see you again tomorrow.